So the title of so this is kind of just a general title for the PowerPoint. I'm still kind of thinking through a title for when the time comes when I write this op-ed. But Italy's Queer Jubilee, if you don't know what Jubilee is, it's basically the church sort of millennial the thing with the faithful and the laity. And so one happened in 2000, and it became a very important site for thinking through LGBTQ pride and its own politics, and particularly this idea of these different types of chapters of world pride that particularly took in Rome in 2000. And so I'm very interested here in using the medium of the op-ed to talk about a particular commemoration, which it's going to be 50 years since the 1972 Little Stonewall is how it's been memorialized, called Piccola Stonewall in Italian. It took place in San Remo, which is in the Ligurian region in the northwest of Italy. And it became this important site where a bunch of sex-phobic doctors were protested by the Come To homosexual revolutionaries of 72. And it's become a particular sort of passionate referent throughout all of Italian history, with gay and lesbian history since. But what particularly makes it like a very fascinating, something that I'd like to see in a US-based publication, and I'm thinking of two in particular that are a bit geared towards this kind of project, is just when I was looking, for example, at the San Remo Pride, 50 years of Pride here, they put an exhibition by Archigay, which is the largest gay organization, and it had some of the most fascinating people in attendance. So, it has some people like a council for culture, the municipality, but then also, a pastor of the Waldensian Church of San Remo. And so that is actually a particularly interesting thing, because the Waldensians are this proto-Protestant group that's always been since the 80s, very kind and interested in the gay movement, and play a very core part in particularly gay history. And so I'm interested in writing on this 50th anniversary of the Stonewall that's coming at a moment when, there's been a lot of Vatican resistance, and also coupled with that resistance, a celebration of reappropriated faith. And so I've selected some moments, which is the one I just talked about, which is the Little Stonewall. I have a few others here that I'm going to go over in my PowerPoint, but I'm really hoping that what's going to happen with this project is that I want to write an op-ed for June, because that's when, Pride is happening. But then also, I want to do some interviews, and I've gotten into contact with people that I've kind of known of, at least have connected on social media with. So if someone like Gonzalo Orquin, who's a Spanish artist who I'll get to, these are all people that I want to interview and kind of formulate a kind of commemoration that's thinking about what activists are actually doing on the ground. I think initially the project was my interest in, how do journalists write, the differences between the US and Italy. And I realized as I tried to do that, I was getting a bit discombobulated, because I realized how precise, these articles have to be. And I realized it was kind of no good to go in that direction. So instead I thought, looking at the process of commemoration and faith could be just a very helpful analytic for any US-based group. Okay, so some of the interviews, they're in process, but there's Jonathan Terino, who is the Waldensian pastor who was at the San Remo exhibit. This is the only photo I could find of him, but I've reached out and I'm waiting on a reply. This is Gonzalo Orquin. And he became, you'll see in the next slide, but he's this artist who did these exhibitions in 2013. That were very he received a letter from the Vatican telling him to stop doing what he was doing. It became this little spectacle. And then, of course, some of the organizers from the Circolo Mario Miele, one of the mainstay gay activist groups in Rome in particular, which is where I'll be, which is why I'm considering interviewing some of the older members, how they're thinking about pride and what they're thinking of, for example, the DDL Zan, which was the bill that didn't pass, mainly due to the Vatican using the Lateran Treaty from 1929 which was reinstalled in the Republic's constitution and then modified in 85. Like there's this whole long history to the Concordat, but it was reused to stall it. And then it was nationalists kicked out the bill. It was anti-transphobia, anti-misogyny bill. So it became a bit of a symbol. So I'm quite curious how they're celebrating and at the same time recognizing the different ways in which Vatican finds its way into civil life, which is a large part an extension of my dissertation. So to just give some sense, this is the art exhibit by Orkin. It's Cosiquiero, like yes, like I want. And this is a very poorly pixelated image of the Vatican letter that he received. And, you know, he's always fascinated me. I met him one time in 2017. And that's how I got in contact with him. And I was just fascinated by 2015 civil unions were allowed in Italy. And so in 2013, when he was doing this, the stakes were really high. And so he just did all these beautiful flash mob, like going into a church and just getting people to kiss and just doing a ton of those things in different churches. So I could keep going on forever, but that's Piramide. It's like a major spot in Rome. And what's interesting is I was looking through lots of images of world pride that I was able to find in different like primary sources from the time. And, you know, like it says here, for example, like, you know, like sono qui perché sono cristiano, different things like it's just this very fascinating way in which they took a pride that, you know, in different regions becomes its own sort of festival and then made it into an entirely anti-Vatican front, no less because this was the same year in June of Jubilee, like it was the exact same time. So they were occupying the same streets that were going to be occupied by Catholics in celebration. So you know, you got people basically naked and it's from all around the world giving their sort of not necessarily anti-Christian, but their anti-institutional front. Let me see. So these are some things I've had in my archives. So La Mucca means cow. And there's a nightclub that the Circolo, the circle of homosexual culture, Mario Mieli has. It's called Mucca Assassina, which means killer cow. And it's because they used to they first started their club in a slaughterhouse. It was an ex-slaughterhouse. They weren't killing. It became a sort of avant-garde little art scene in Rome. And so, you know, there's this longer history. It's not like, you know, it's a very old story within gay and lesbian history that, you know, 2000, they're all coming out sort of thing. Like now we've done it. There's been so many different important satirical but heartfelt ways in which people are reclaiming their faith. And these are like little, you know, cultural artifacts that I think could be so interesting, at least at the visual level in an op-ed. But, you know, you have this Vatican dance, a party at San Pietro, the Ostienses, you know, a street that collides with the Vatican street in Rome, different things like that. So this was in 93. And another important moment, which kind of gives background to the 2000 Rome Pride that I'm really interested in contextualizing as a sort of history of our present, is there was a simulation of this man. He was from Palermo. He went to St. Peter's and he burnt himself alive in front of the basilica, and it was this very horrifying thing that he did, but it caused a ton of, you know, people to come en masse and protest in ways not dissimilar to the ways that people are like protesting as of recently. Obviously he was like a sort of martyr romantic symbol that people could organize around. People, you know, people documented his family. You know, gays are expressing their rage, or I don't want to say that he was against the church sort of things. Basically people trying to deal with this man who is self-immolated. And so I'll just play this because this was the formal passing of the Vatican against the Didielzan, because that's in particular what makes World Pride this year going to be this very difficult moment is because, the Vatican stepped in, and so it kind of changes things up.
Libertà di riunione e di manifestazione del pensiero.
Oh, and the Osservatore Romano is like the periodical of the Vatican, it's like V1.
Libertà di riunione e di manifestazione del pensiero. Ad agitare il mondo cattolico, in particolare l'istituzione della giornata contro l'omofobia nelle scuole di ogni ordine e grado, prevista dall'articolo 7 del disegno di legge. Dalle scuole cattoliche alle aule di catechismo, alle chiese, si temono discriminazioni e possibili conseguenze giudiziarie nell'espressione delle proprie idee. Articolo 7 del disegno.
So you can even see right here, anti-fascism goes hand in hand with this sort of all of these different types of terms and signifiers are all kind of mixing with one another in this moment, and I just find it fascinating as a sort of cultural inventory of things that I could use to explain the moment that's going to be June. Is like, how do you celebrate when all these other things are occurring, and particularly the emphasis on faith has just been something that I've continued to try to find clearer and clearer ways to demonstrate. So yeah, I'm looking forward to writing this op-ed and having it published in June. So let me stop sharing.